So, we're doing another rebranding thing
Whoa, 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 whoa. Why wasn't I informed?
because it's need to know.
You are literally telling the audience right now,
Yeah,
but not
anyway,
me.
so close your ears, Parker, just to plug them up. So, remember how last episode I wanted to do a whole new year, new me?
Oh, I mean, if I'm gonna be honest, I don't really remember anything that happens on the show.
Okay, I said close your ears, Parker. Plug them up. All right. So I'm gonna be a bad boy attitude now. You know, I skipped 2 of my classes today, and I jaywalked. What do you think of me now, Parker?
Oh, sorry, what? I can't hear you. You told me to
Oh,
put my...
right, yeah, I told you to. Boop. I wish I didn't have to hear you either all the time, but here we are.
Okay, fine, yeah, you're right. But you're gonna have to prove that you're the Will Smith.
Now, this is a story all about how my life got flipped, turned upside down, and I'd like to take a minute, so just sit right there. I'll tell you how I became the prince of a town called Bel Air. In West Philadelphia, born and raised, on the playground is where I spent most of my days, chilling out, maxing, relaxing, all cool, and shooting some b-ball outside of the school when a couple of guys who were up to no good started making trouble in my neighborhood. I got in one little fight, and my mom got scared and said, "You move in with your auntie and your uncle in Bel Air." Nate.
After 17 long years and numerous delays and release date changes, we finally have the highly anticipated third entry in the Bad Boys saga. In all seriousness, many people, including myself, consider the first 2 Bad Boy movies, directed by Michael Bay and starring Will Smith and Martin Lawrence as buddy cops Mike Lowry and Marcus Burnett, to be the ultimate guilty pleasure movies. They're not groundbreaking in any way, and honestly, it'd be a little too much to call them truly great movies. But man, are they entertaining. Bad Boys for Life is not directed by Michael Bay. Instead, the directing duo Adil and Bilal take the reins of the franchise, but thankfully, we still have Will Smith and Martin Lawrence back in action. The plot finds the duo now in their 50s. Marcus has recently become a grandfather and wants to retire, and Mike is suffering from a bit of a midlife crisis and is desperately clinging on to his old ways. The most surprising thing about Bad Boys for Life is that it's actually quite good. This is easily the best film in the series in terms of quality, and a lot of that can be thanked to the balancing of the tones. Unlike Bay, Adil and Bilal aren't focused solely on making big bombastic action scenes every 5 minutes. Instead, this film is built around Smith and Lawrence's electric chemistry that hasn't fizzled out even a little bit. There's also a surprising amount of heart here, and there's scenes here that actually are quite emotional. Granted, it's not like these scenes are going to move you to tears, but they were a nice addition to the film as a whole. Another surprising aspect to this film is that you typically expect this to be a film that is predictable, but there's actually some plot twists here that I really didn't see coming. Granted, it's certainly predictable in other areas, and this certainly doesn't do anything new. It's still a Bad Boys movie after all. So the supporting cast around Smith and Lawrence is actually quite solid as well. It was nice to see Joey Pants back as the short-tempered Captain Howard, and the new additions were enjoyable as well, from Paula Nunez to even Vanessa Hudgens, Alexandra Ludwig, and Charles Mountain. I half expected the new cast members to come across as pointless or annoying, but they instead actually helped carry the movie. Is Bad Boys for Life a perfect movie? Of course not, but it delivers what its marketing promises and is one of the biggest pleasant surprises I've seen in a while. Most of these long-gestating sequels to franchises from the 90s and early 2000s typically fall flat on their face, but luckily Bad Boys for Life surpassed my expectations. I'm going to give the film 3.5 stars out of 5. Until next time, I'm Nate Richard.
Thanks, Nate. Actually, I think we can all agree that you're the real bad boy. And speaking of bad boys, Abby, you should dye your hair.
What?
It's just, I don't know, you just look like your business is misery. You could say misery business.
Oh, I could really use a wish right now.
Like airplanes, exactly. That's what I'm going for.
No, just someone else to talk to except you. Oh, look, it's Matt here to talk about Hayley Williams. Not listening. Take it away, Matt.
Hayley Williams' new song, bitches. It is no secret to anyone that knows me that I am a gigantic Paramore fan. I've been listening to them since middle school, and they're one of the only good bands from the good old emo days of the 2000s that are still putting out consistently great music. I even have their logo tattooed on my arm. Their last album, 2017's After Laughter, had them adopting a more popular, more 80s influenced sound that may have divided some listeners, but I found to include some of their best material and showcase an exciting direction for the band. I was fortunate enough to see them live in Chicago a few years ago, and yeah, my life peaked at that moment. It's been downhill ever since. Anyways, one of the many things that sets Paramore apart from other similar bands are the powerhouse vocals from their incredible frontwoman, Hayley Williams. And on Wednesday, Hayley dropped Simmer, the first single from her upcoming solo album, Petals for Armor. While this marks Hayley's first foray as a true solo artist, fellow bandmate Taylor York co-wrote the track as well as produced it. Touring bassist Joey Howard also has a songwriting credit. The song itself had been teased for the last few weeks with eerie videos of Hayley running through the woods and heavy breathing, so I didn't know what to expect it to sound like. The song opens with a simple, distorted synth that is slowly built upon by a cappella vocals and that heavy breathing that was featured in the teaser vids. Once the song kicks in, it's a fairly simple instrumental with a groovy and steady drum beat and a dark bass line. The lyrics detail Hayley struggling with anger and keeping it contained, asking how to draw the line between wrath and mercy, followed by her telling herself to simmer down. It's a much more brooding sounding track than I was expecting. It's kind of a bit of a 180 from the sound of the last Paramore record, and it also sounds Radiohead-esque at times, but Hayley's seething delivery and songwriting makes it unmistakably her own thing. Now, while I think the track could have used a bit more of a punch in the instrumental, I'm really digging what I'm hearing here so far. This is a really cool direction for Hayley, and I'm very excited to see what she has in store for us when Petals for Armor is released on May 8th. I'm Matthew Simmons. Dumb joke. And thanks for watching. Please, somebody put me out of my misery. Business. Another dumb joke. Okay.
Thanks, Matt. I love everybody at The Real Deal except Parker. You are the only exception.
At this point, why shouldn't I just be alone instead of sitting next to you?
Can you blame me for my bullying, though? It's just everybody at The Real Deal. Honestly, we are broken.
We are going through some hard times.
It can be just too hard to be fake happy.
We should really fix it.
Damn it, Parker! We were on a roll with the Paramore songs.
I'm sorry. I can't help it. I'm stuck on the clown puns, okay? So, Abby, it looks like Logan's up next.
You can see me?
Yes, I can.
Here I was thinking about how I could hit you with a chair right now.
Please don't go down this road, Abby. You're triggering something inside of me that I buried a long time ago.
Logan and I are just tired of your stone cold attitude on the show.
There we go, okay. Abby, you are straying dangerously close to wrestling.
Logan and I have decided to take you off of the show. You're out of The Real Deal's WWE.
Nothing means nothing.
Nothing means nothing? What do you mean by that?
I'm talking about all the way to the top, yeah. Unjustifiably in a position I would rather not be in. But the cream will rise to the top. Oh, yeah.
Oh, God, is this some sort of coping mechanism?
Macho Man's got something to say right now. And let me point to the heads of The Real Deal, Logan and Celia. Macho Man Parker Carlson is not happy with your decision. I am the cream of Real Deal. Oh.
Macho Man Parker Carlson? You're definitely compensating for your lack of personality.
Oh, there's no doubt about it, you mangy people. You know that I am the cream of the crop.
Yep, we've lost him.
Oh, I'm the cream of the Macho Man. I got
Hey, Logan, you're reviewing a wrestling show. Whoa, right? Care to share that one with us?
Playtime.
New and returning television shows seem to be announced every week, and last week was no different, with Glow returning for a 4th and final season. Starring Allison Brie, this series follows the gorgeous ladies of wrestling, an all-female wrestling league. While they do their main battles in the ring, they also have their own personal battles that makes for extremely interesting TV. I'm a huge fan of this show and cannot wait to watch the newest season. What's interesting to me, however, is that this is the final season of the series. Now, I am sad to see the show is ending. It's hilarious, has a great cast that play interesting characters, and anytime professional wrestling is put on my screen, I'm going to watch it. But in my opinion, more shows need to end sooner rather than later. Now, I'm not saying shows that run longer are bad. Quite the opposite, actually. Some of the most beloved shows have run for a long time. Friends, The Office, Supernatural, and The Big Bang Theory have all run for many years before ending, and they were big hits. Not to mention South Park still running after 22 seasons. People love these series, but that doesn't mean a longer run time is better overall. Let's take a look at some animated series, mainly The Simpsons and Family Guy. In my and many other people's opinion, these shows should have ended a long time ago. The writers started running out of ideas and needed crazier and more convoluted storylines to keep the show afloat. Many series have suffered from this fate. American Dad, 2.5 Men, and many other shows either got stale, got weird, or major shifts happened in the story that weren't well received. It's not good for hit shows to run this long. I believe it's better for shows to end early, in fact. A show ending after 4 or 5 seasons may upset people at the beginning, but in lots of cases, they end before they start getting bad. Glow has been great in all 3 of their seasons, and I have a feeling that the 4th will be the same. I'd rather just have 4 great seasons than 4 great seasons and 5 meh to bad seasons. Shows like Mr. Robot, Gotham, Daredevil, Breaking Bad, and Silicon Valley were all great throughout their tenure and will be remembered as great series from end to end. I love great TV series, and I just wish that they would cash out when they are ahead instead of pushing their luck and losing in the end. That's all for me this week. I'm Logan Lewis, America's 2nd most famous shrimp boat captain. Back to the lovely hosts.
Thank you, Logan. Also, I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me. It just appeared.
It's like you turned into a less coherent, objectively worse retreat of all well-beloved person that well-shaped the lives of millions of people. Kind of like that one franchise. What's it called? It's got like Star in it.
Star Trek?
No, not that.
Stargate?
Nope.
Battlestar Galactica?
No, it's got Anakin in it.
Doesn't ring a bell. Whatever it is, it must not be that good.
Yeah, maybe Tira could jog our memories, and I don't know. What have you got up for us today, Tira?
This review was supposed to be about The Witcher and how much joy I have watching it. It's a bit more timely, it just dropped on Netflix, but someone, Nate, reminded me of how much I absolutely hated The Rise of Skywalker. So here we go, I guess. Spoiler warning, by the way, but if you haven't seen this by now, then you probably don't even care about spoilers, so it doesn't even matter. Anyway, The Rise of Skywalker is a disaster. I didn't get into Star Wars really until after The Force Awakens, and that was when I went back and watched all the movies and actually got into Star Wars. Over the past few years, waiting for new Star Wars content was so exciting and so fun for me. The Last Jedi came out. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it as much as some incels on the internet. I thought it was a fine movie, and I was excited to see where the 3rd and final Star Wars film in the Skywalker saga would end. And boy, was I completely and utterly let down and disappointed. Like I said earlier, the film is a disaster from almost start to finish. This movie was just The Last Jedi retcons, one after another, and I don't think I've ever seen a more dismal and cynical piece of cinema. Anyway, we learned through both an awful line in the opening crawl and through a really goofy line given by Poe Dameron, we'll talk about him later, that somehow Emperor Palpatine came back. Okay, Emperor Palpatine comes back is a storyline that's just a Last Jedi recon. Kyle Ron tells Rey her parents were nobody and she was left on Jakku, blah, blah, blah. That tied with a lot of the Rose stuff and the Broom Kid at the end were, I don't know, symbols for some of the themes of the film. One of them being, you don't have to come from a big name, Skywalker, Palpatine, whatever, to do great things, which I thought was a great lesson for these new set of films set 30 years later. It's a new time and it would have been a nice opportunity for regular, everyday people to relate. But they completely abandoned that in The Rise of Skywalker, and it's such a disappointing cop-out. And there are tons of disappointing cop-outs in this movie. Finn being a stormtrooper meaning anything, ignored and forgotten about. The online hype at potentially having an LGBT character in Poe Dameron and potentially Finn, big ignored. In fact, they even cast 2 characters to be in the film just to no homo them. Poor Kerry Russell and Naomi Ackie. Rose as a character is just completely forgotten about and reduced to a background character with like 3 lines. Speaking of Jannah, Jannah's character was also a runaway stormtrooper like Finn, and you think that's important to the story, to their characters, but guess what? They're not. They try and kill off Chewbacca, and it ends up literally being a case of, whoops, he was on the wrong ship and not the one that blew up. If you're gonna kill off a character, either kill him off or don't. Another problem I had was how much Rey's character was wrapped up in the people around her. It felt like she was never making her own decisions and simply only reacting to the things around her. Her relationship with Kylo Ren was also severely underdeveloped and went nowhere because beefy incel suddenly dies. And of all the online nuts to listen to and to make some fan creation canon, it's the Reylos? I'm sick. Princess Leia also dies, and Oscar Isaac in the following scene, is so good. Poor Oscar Isaac and Daisy Ridley and John Boyega for carrying this entire film on their backs. I know with the real-life death of Carrie Fisher, there were obviously going to be problems with finishing Leia's character arc, but I guarantee anything else would have been better than them literally taking the scraps of her scenes from The Last Jedi and just putting them where they sort of fit, and they didn't. And Poe, my boy, they did you so dirty. The son of 2 Rebel Alliance fighters and General Leia Organa's right-hand man, and the only Latinx adjacent character was a spice dealer. Cool. I hated this movie. I cared about Rey and Finn and Poe and was excited to see where they ended up. Rey ended up on a planet with no actual connection to Luke or Leia other than the fact that Luke lived there, mostly hated it, and then dipped out the first chance he got to fight in the rebellion. Finn and Poe were sort of given the short end of the stick, and I feel like I got the short end of the stick with the franchise. And considering the importance of Leia, Luke, and Han, Obi-Wan, Padme, and Anakin, you would think Poe, Finn, and Rey would serve equal importance, but that wasn't the case. Clearly, J.J. Abrams or someone at Disney wanted to cater to all of the complaints online after The Last Jedi, which would have been fine if the people doing the yelling weren't literally people who didn't think women were human beings. After the disappointment that was the Game of Thrones series finale, I didn't think I would have to suffer like this with Star Wars, but here we are at 52% on Rotten Tomatoes, and only the Reylos are happy. I'm Tiara Spells, and I'm never gonna like anything ever again because it will end horribly. Back to you guys.
Oh, I remember. By the way, thanks, Tiara. Lovely as always, unlike some people here.
Yeah, Logan.
Ow.
Anyways, it was called, wait. No, it's gone again. I don't know.
Well, maybe you'll remember it and my Stop the Bullying #SaveParker2020 campaign after our final word.
Oh, that's so sweet, but I only remember things that matter, so.
We normally talk about movies, television, film, whatever here on The Real Deal, but we hardly ever talk about video games anymore. That is, rest in peace, 8-bit. Lots and lots of news has been happening recently in the video game industry, so I'm going to give a quick rundown of everything that's happened. Good news, the wonderfully wholesome farming-like game Stardew Valley has sold over 10 million copies. Unlike Hollywood's elitism, this is great news for the video game industry since one of the most popular, well-received games of recent memory is from an indie dev of one person, Eric Barone. Good job. Bad news, lots of games have been getting delayed, the most recent of which being Dying Light 2 being delayed indefinitely. After 2015's surprisingly good zombie survival game, Dying Light, I was actually more disappointed with this news than some of the other more popular games being delayed, like Cyberpunk 2077, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Doom Eternal, and Marvel's Avengers, which, between you and me, okay, between us, they really needed that delay. I mean, have you seen the trailers and gameplay footage for Marvel's Avengers? It looks stunningly dated for a game set to release on the brink of a next-generation console. Also, how is Avengers even supposed to work? They've announced that it's a live service game, which does not bode well for the story-driven adventure they seem to be setting up. Do they know how poorly a story works in a live service game? The only example anybody can think of is Destiny, which I don't even have the time to explain why I don't have the time to explain how bad that turned out. Anyways, as disappointed as I was at Dying Light 2 getting delayed, I am immensely more sad at the admittedly older news of The Last of Us 2 getting delayed. I mean, come on. Like, I know a delayed great game is better than a rushed crappy one, but still, The Last of Us is without a doubt the best game ever made, and I will throw fists at anybody who disagrees. Naughty Dog is the premier video game studio focused on bringing cinematic stories to gameplay that amplifies everything in the story. I'm so anxious for its release on May 29th that I've been replaying the original from 2013, and it still holds up. Calm down. Sorry for that side tangent. But that's pretty much all the important news that people have been talking about. Yeah, that's it. Oh, yeah, Half-Life 3.
All right. So another great thing that I experienced over winter break, I told you I was saving that content, was Frozen 2. I think it goes without saying that it was amazing, but it's my job to tell you why it was amazing. And you may be thinking, well, yeah, it's great because the first one was, duh. But I would have to look at you and say that I still have explaining to do because I think it was better than the first one. That's right, I said it. The movie that shook the world years ago came back with a new fire. Or should I say, snowball? Okay, so let's get to why. Well, much like the first one, it wasn't a basic love story. Kristoff and Anna's love story plays a huge part in it, but it's not the main story. The main story is about finding out about past events that led them to where they are now, especially Elsa being the magical one and all. And along the way, they uncover so many hidden things from their past, and some really valuable lessons are learned. The lessons aren't just for kids, though. And the first one was geared more for kids, yes, but those same kids are approaching adulthood now, and the lessons targeted the same exact group, us. I mean, there's literally a song about getting older. That isn't to say kids can't enjoy it, but I definitely think our age group will appreciate the more intense stuff a bit more. Now, I don't think a single 5-year-old cried as much as I did in that theater. I cried 4 times. 4 times. I also laughed so hard that I cried 4 times. So everything in that movie hit perfectly with me. And I know that makes me sound immature, and at times, perhaps I am. But trust me when I say that this movie will speak to you in some way, even if you refuse to be on board with anything Frozen. I think the perfect movie can capture any age group. Say what you want about how overrated the first movie was, or how you don't understand why everyone thinks it's so great. But until you've seen the second one, I don't think you can make an opinion about it. Even if you never saw the first one, the second one will still be great for you to see. And I must applaud Disney, because in recent years, I know I have been a little harsh with them by saying that remakes need to stop, but I think they have improved the lessons in their movies by a mile. They're no longer teaching little girls that they need a prince in their life to be happy, and they're no longer teaching little boys that they need to be strong heroes and save the girls. They're creating stories that can be applicable in the real world. That seems far-fetched with all the magic, especially in Frozen, but the moral values are still there. There was a part in the movie when Anna sang a song about being strong and continuing on, even though she had no idea how to. That is a strong, fierce woman, and we need to appreciate that a little bit. Now, little kids will watch it and know that they can be a strong woman or love a strong woman one day. So I give Disney a round of applause this week. A round of applause for changing the routine, and a round of applause for creating a sequel that was arguably better than the first. I didn't think it would be possible with how much hype the first one got, but I was wrong. That's all I've got for this week. I hope everyone has a chance to go see Frozen 2 in the near future.
I may not have cried as much as you, but I loved Frozen 2. We're swapped.
Whoa.
What? Anyways, if you want more from silly antics from us here at The Real Deal, check out our Facebook, Twitter, and website for all things entertainment. I'm your host, Parker Carlson.
And I'm Abby Perry, feeling very uncomfortable in this seat now. See you next time on The Real Deal.
It doesn't have the same feel.
It doesn't.
You know, it's just like, it's wrong. Crime against nature. Yeah, it's like,